The Winterstone Library stood as an imposing relic from a bygone era, its stone facade weathered by time, yet exuding an air of timeless grandeur. Inside, towering shelves brimming with books lined the walls, their spines worn and pages yellowed with age. It was here, among the labyrinthine aisles and dimly lit alcoves, that Rebecca Callahan found solace. Rebecca, a young librarian with a passion for history, often volunteered for the late shift. She loved the quietude of the library at night, when the only sounds were the faint rustle of pages and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. On this particular evening, as she meticulously reshelved returned books, she noticed a peculiar draft tickling the back of her neck. Glancing around, Rebecca saw nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, as she moved deeper into the library's recesses, the draft grew stronger, accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. She paused, straining her ears. The whisper was elusive, like a distant murmur carried on the wind. "Hello?" Rebecca called out softly, her voice echoing in the silence. No response came, only the persistent whispering that seemed to dance just out of reach. Intrigued and a little unnerved, Rebecca followed the sound. It led her to a dimly lit corner of the library she rarely visited. Here, the air felt cooler, and the shadows seemed to cling more stubbornly to the edges of the room. She ran her fingers along the spines of the books, feeling the rough texture of leather and the cool smoothness of worn cloth. As she reached the end of the aisle, her hand brushed against something unusual, a slight gap in the bookshelf. Rebecca's heart quickened. She examined the gap more closely, realizing that a section of the shelf was slightly ajar. With a cautious push, the entire unit swung open with a soft groan, revealing a hidden door behind it. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the door, its surface covered in dust and cobwebs, suggesting it hadn't been disturbed for years. The whispers grew louder, almost beckoning her to enter. Rebecca hesitated, her mind racing with questions. What lay beyond this door? Why had it been hidden? And what were those whispers that seemed to call her name? Compelled by a mix of curiosity and an inexplicable urge, Rebecca reached for the door handle. It was cold to the touch, sending a shiver up her spine. She turned it slowly, the old metal protesting with a creak. The door opened into darkness, a musty, stale air wafting out to greet her. She stepped inside, the beam of her flashlight piercing the gloom. The hidden wing was vast, its high ceilings lost in shadow. Rows upon rows of ancient books filled the room, their covers thick with dust. As Rebecca ventured further, the whispers surrounded her, filling her mind with an eerie sense of familiarity. It was then that she noticed an ornately bound book on a pedestal at the center of the room. Unlike the others, this one seemed untouched by time. Its leather cover was pristine, the intricate designs glinting in the flashlight's beam. Drawn to it, Rebecca approached the pedestal, the whispers now a chorus in her ears. With trembling hands, she opened the book. The moment she did, a chill swept through the room, and the whispers ceased. Rebecca's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows on the walls. She felt a presence behind her, cold breath against her neck. Spinning around, she saw nothing but darkness. Yet she knew she was no longer alone. The book in her hands felt heavier, as if imbued with a malevolent force. She had awakened something in the Phantom Library wing, something that had lain dormant for centuries. Rebecca fled the hidden room, slamming the door shut behind her. The whispers resumed, now filled with a sinister glee. She knew she had to uncover the secrets of the cursed collection and find a way to stop the malevolent spirit she had unwittingly released. The fate of Winterstone Library, and perhaps her own soul, depended on it. Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a boundary that should never have been disturbed. The whispers from the Phantom Library wing echoed in her mind, filling her dreams with unsettling images of shadowy figures and ancient tomes. Each day she returned to Winterstone Library. The hidden door loomed larger in her thoughts. A week passed before Rebecca decided she needed to explore further. Armed with a notebook and a resolve bolstered by sleepless nights, she made her way back to the dim corner where she had first found the hidden door. She tugged the makeshift handle once more and slipped inside the dark passage. The air was thick with dust, and Rebecca had to cover her mouth and nose with a handkerchief to avoid coughing. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing more shelves filled with forgotten books, each one coated in a thick layer of grime. It was as if time itself had forgotten this place. She moved carefully, making notes of her surroundings. The architecture of this hidden wing was older, more ornate than the rest of the library. The woodwork was intricate, with carvings of strange symbols that she couldn't decipher. It seemed almost as if this wing was a part of another building altogether, one that predated the current library by centuries. Rebecca paused by a series of paintings on the wall, their colors faded but the scenes still discernible. They depicted scholars in long robes, surrounded by books and arcane instruments. Their expressions were grave, their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. One painting in particular caught her eye. It showed a group of these scholars performing a ritual around a large, open book. The book's pages glowed with an unnatural light, and the scholars' faces were twisted in concentration and fear. As she examined the paintings, a draft of cold air brushed past her, causing the pages of her notebook to flutter. She turned, half expecting to see someone standing there, but the passage was empty. The sense of being watched intensified, and she quickened her pace, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within this wing. At the far end of the passage, she found another door. This one was heavier, reinforced with iron bands, and adorned with more of the strange symbols she had seen carved into the woodwork. It looked formidable, as if it was meant to keep something inside, or perhaps keep something out. Taking a deep breath, Rebecca pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, the sound echoing through the passage. Beyond it lay a large chamber, the heart of the Phantom Library wing. The room was circular with a high dome ceiling. Shelves lined the walls, filled with more ancient books, and in the center stood a massive stone pedestal. On the pedestal rested a book, larger and more ornate than the one she had found before. Its cover was bound in black leather, embossed with silver runes that seemed to writhe and shift under her gaze. The air in the room was thick with a palpable sense of dread, and Rebecca hesitated, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon her. Gathering her courage, she approached the pedestal. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Her hands shook as she reached for the book, the air around her growing colder with each step. She hesitated, her fingers hovering just above the cover. A sense of foreboding washed over her, but she forced herself to lift the book and open it. The pages were filled with strange, flowing script that she couldn't understand. As she turned the pages, she felt a sharp pain in her head, and the whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, each one vying for her attention. She dropped the book, stumbling back as a gust of wind erupted from it, blowing out her flashlight. In the darkness, the voices grew louder, more frenzied. Rebecca felt a cold hand grip her shoulder, and she screamed, spinning around to find herself face to face with a spectral figure. The spirit's eyes glowed with a malevolent light, its mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "You should not have come here," it whispered, its voice a chilling echo in the chamber. "You have awakened us, and now you must pay the price." Rebecca backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. The spirit advanced, its form shifting and flickering like a flame. She turned and ran, the darkness closing in around her. The whispers followed her, filling her mind with fear and despair. She reached the door, slamming it shut behind her. The voices faded, but the sense of dread remained. Rebecca knew she couldn't face this alone. She needed help, someone who understood the dark history of Winterstone Library and the secrets of the Phantom Library Wing. She knew just the person to call. Rebecca didn't waste any time. As soon as she exited the Phantom Library Wing, she pulled out her phone and dialed Michael's number. Michael had always been fascinated by the darker side of history, particularly local legends and haunted places. If anyone could help her understand what she had unleashed, it was him. "Rebecca?" Michael's voice crackled through the line. "What's going on? You sound out of breath." "Michael, I need your help. It's about the Winterstone Library. I found a hidden wing and something's wrong. There's a book. No, books that are cursed. I think I released something. Can you come?" Michael agreed without hesitation. Within half an hour, he arrived at the library, his eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Rebecca led him to the hidden door, explaining everything that had happened along the way. Michael listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "So you say the whispers led you to this door?" Michael asked, examining the carvings on the hidden door. Rebecca nodded. "Yes, and when I opened one of the books, I felt a presence. It was like something came alive." Michael's face grew serious. "We need to document everything. This hidden wing could be tied to some dark history. Let's see what we can find." Together, they ventured back into the Phantom Library Wing, the oppressive atmosphere closing in around them. Rebecca showed Michael the paintings and the ornate book she had found on the pedestal. Michael took notes, his fingers tracing the silver runes on the book's cover. "These symbols are ancient," Michael murmured. "They're used in rituals to bind spirits. It's no wonder you felt something when you opened it." Rebecca shivered at the memory. "What do we do now?" "We need to find out more about these books," Michael said. "There must be a reason they were hidden away. Let's start by examining the collection." They spent hours combing through the dusty shelves, carefully pulling out books and inspecting their contents. Each one seemed more ominous than the last, filled with archaic texts and unsettling illustrations. One book in particular caught Michael's eye. Its cover was adorned with a sigil Rebecca recognized from the paintings. "This one looks important," Michael said, opening the book. The pages were filled with incantations and descriptions of rituals. These books weren't just hidden, they were imprisoned here. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. "Imprisoned?" "Yes," Michael continued. "It seems the librarians of the past were trying to protect the world from the malevolent spirits contained within these books. They must have known how dangerous they were." As they delved deeper into the book, they found an account of a librarian who had successfully bound a spirit back into its book using a specific ritual. The ritual required certain items: a silver mirror, a candle made from beeswax, and a lock of hair from the one who released the spirit. Rebecca's stomach churned. "That means me." Michael nodded solemnly. "We'll need to gather these items if we're to perform the ritual and bind the spirit back. But first, we need to find out exactly which spirit we're dealing with." Rebecca recalled the spectral figure she had encountered. It was a man, or at least it looked like one. He had this malevolent glow in his eyes and he said, "I shouldn't have come here." Michael flipped through the book, looking for references to a spirit matching Rebecca's description. There are several possibilities. We need more information to narrow it down. As they continued their research, A sudden cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing their candles. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, filling the air with a sense of impending doom. Rebecca and Michael exchanged a fearful glance. "We don't have much time," Michael said, his voice barely audible over the whispers. "The spirit is growing stronger. We need to find a way to stop it before it breaks free completely." Rebecca's resolve hardened. "Then let's keep looking. We have to find out what we're dealing with and how to bind it back. We can't let this thing escape." With renewed determination, they delved deeper into the cursed collection, hoping to find the key to stopping the malevolent spirit before it was too late. The sun had long set by the time Rebecca and Michael emerged from the Phantom Library wing, their faces drawn with exhaustion, but their determination undiminished. They knew they had to continue their research, but the oppressive atmosphere of the hidden wing was beginning to take its toll on their nerves. They decided to regroup in the main library, where the familiar surroundings offered a modicum of comfort. As they settled at a large oak table in the reading room, Rebecca pulled out her laptop and began searching for any historical records related to Winterstone Library. Michael, meanwhile, pored over his notes, trying to piece together the clues they had found so far. "Look at this," Rebecca said after a few minutes, turning her laptop to face Michael. "I found an old article about the library. It mentions a librarian named Elias Cromwell who disappeared mysteriously in the early 1900s. They say he was last seen near the section where we found the hidden door." Michael's eyes widened. "That's the same name I found in one of the journals in the Phantom Wing. He was deeply involved in studying those cursed books." Rebecca nodded. "It says here that Cromwell was obsessed with arcane knowledge and often spoke of spirits and otherworldly entities. Some people thought he was mad." "That's probably why he was drawn to the Phantom Wing," Michael mused. "He must have been trying to harness the power of the spirits contained in those books. But something must have gone wrong." Rebecca shivered at the thought. "We need to find out more about Cromwell and his work. Maybe there's something in the local archives that can help us understand what he was trying to do." The next day, they visited the town's historical society. The building was old and quaint, filled with dusty records and artifacts from the town's past. The curator, a kindly elderly woman named Mrs. Abernathy, welcomed them warmly and listened with interest as they explained their research. "Oh, Elias Cromwell," Mrs. Abernathy said, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "He was quite the character. I remember reading about his disappearance. It caused quite a stir back in the day. Let me see what I can find." She led them to a back room filled with stacks of old newspapers, journals, and town records. After several hours of searching, they uncovered a collection of Cromwell's personal journals, along with a series of letters he had written to a fellow scholar. "Look at this," Michael said, pointing to a passage in one of the journals. "Cromwell describes a ritual to bind a particularly malevolent spirit he called the Watcher. He believed the spirit was the key to unlocking untold knowledge, but also warned of its dangerous nature." Rebecca read over his shoulder, her eyes widening. "The Watcher must be the spirit I encountered in the Phantom Wing. If Cromwell couldn't bind it, we need to be very careful." Among the letters, they found one that mentioned a secret compartment in Cromwell's study, located in his old house on the outskirts of town. The letter hinted at a hidden cache of items necessary for the binding ritual. "This could be our chance," Rebecca said. "If we can find those items, we might be able to complete the ritual and bind the Watcher back into its book." That evening, they drove to the address mentioned in the letter. Cromwell's house was a dilapidated mansion, its windows boarded up and its garden overgrown with weeds. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the moon cast eerie shadows across the crumbling facade. They forced their way inside, the floorboards creaking under their weight. The interior was a mess of dust and cobwebs, with furniture covered in sheets and walls lined with faded portraits. They made their way to Cromwell's study, a large room filled with bookshelves and a massive oak desk. According to the letter, the compartment should be hidden behind the fireplace, Michael said, examining the wall. After a few moments of searching, he found a loose brick and pried it free, revealing a small cavity. Inside, they found a silver mirror, a beeswax candle, and a bundle of hair tied with a ribbon. "We have everything we need," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Now we just need to prepare for the ritual." As they left the house, a cold wind swept through the garden, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers. Rebecca and Michael exchanged a worried glance. They knew they were running out of time. The Watcher was growing stronger, and they had to act quickly if they were to bind it back into the cursed book. Back at the library, they set up the ritual in the main reading room, using the instructions they had found in Cromwell's journal. The air grew heavy with anticipation as they lit the beeswax candle and positioned the silver mirror. Rebecca held the lock of hair in her trembling hand, ready to begin the incantation. As she spoke the ancient words, the room grew colder, and the shadows deepened. The Watcher's malevolent presence filled the air, its whispers rising to a deafening roar. The spirit materialized before them, its eyes glowing with a fierce, otherworldly light. "You cannot bind me," the Watcher hissed, its voice echoing through the room. "You are too late." Rebecca's heart pounded in her chest, but she continued the incantation, her voice steady and resolute. The silver mirror began to glow, reflecting the spirit's form back upon itself. The Watcher screamed in fury, its form flickering and writhing as it fought against the binding. With a final desperate cry, the Watcher was pulled into the mirror, its malevolent presence trapped once more. The room fell silent, the air clear and still. Rebecca and Michael stared at the mirror, their hearts racing. "We did it," Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. "We bound the Watcher back." Rebecca nodded, her legs weak with relief. "But we can't let our guard down. The Phantom Library Wing still holds many secrets, and who knows what other spirits might be lurking within those cursed books." The ordeal of binding the Watcher had taken its toll on Rebecca and Michael, but they knew their task was far from over. The Phantom Library Wing still held many mysteries, and the malevolent presence they had faced was just one of many dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. Determined to prevent further disasters, they delved into the history of Winterstone Library, seeking to understand the tragedies that had befallen previous librarians who dared to explore the hidden wing. Rebecca and Michael began their search in the library's archives, combing through dusty records and ancient ledgers. They discovered a pattern of disappearances and unexplained deaths stretching back centuries, all linked to the Phantom Library Wing. Each case told a similar story. A librarian or scholar became obsessed with the wing's secrets, only to meet a tragic end. One name appeared repeatedly in their research: Elias Cromwell. It became clear that his fate was not an isolated incident. As they dug deeper, they found entries in the town's historical records that painted a chilling picture of his final days. Witnesses reported seeing Cromwell wandering the library late at night, muttering to himself and clutching at unseen phantoms. "It's as if the library consumed him," Rebecca said, shivering as she read an account of Cromwell's last sighting. "He was seen near the Phantom Wing, looking pale and haunted." Michael nodded. "There's more here. Look at this diary entry from another librarian, dated a few years before Cromwell's disappearance. It describes similar occurrences: whispers, shadows, and an overwhelming compulsion to enter the hidden wing. As they pieced together the grim history, they found mention of a woman named Margaret Hale, a librarian from the 1800s who had also vanished under mysterious circumstances. Her diary, preserved in the archives, offered a first-hand account of the wing's eerie influence. November 12th, 1887. The whispers grow louder each night. I can no longer ignore their call. The hidden door behind the bookshelf beckons, its secrets gnawing at my mind. I fear what lies beyond, but my curiosity is insatiable. Tomorrow, I will venture into the wing. November 13th, 1887. The books, they are unlike any I have ever seen. Each one pulses with a dark energy, and I feel their power seeping into my soul. One in particular, bound in black leather, calls to me. I must resist, but I fear it may be too late. The shadows grow stronger. The entries ended abruptly with no explanation of what happened to Margaret. But the implications were clear. She had succumbed to the same dark forces that claimed Cromwell. Rebecca and Michael knew they needed more than just historical accounts to understand the full scope of the library's dark past. They sought out descendants of former librarians, hoping to find personal stories and perhaps even lost artifacts that could shed light on the cursed wing. Their search led them to an old manor on the outskirts of town, home to Elizabeth Cromwell, the great-granddaughter of Elias Cromwell. Elizabeth, a frail but sharp-minded woman in her 80s, welcomed them into her home, intrigued by their quest. "My great-grandfather was a brilliant but troubled man," Elizabeth said, her voice tinged with sadness. "He spoke of the library's secrets often, warning us to stay away from the hidden wing. He believed it was a gateway to another realm, one filled with spirits and ancient powers." She led them to a dusty attic, where they found a trunk filled with Elias's belongings. Among the items were letters, sketches of strange symbols, and a journal detailing his final days. The journal's last entry sent a chill down Rebecca's spine. January 3rd, 1901. The spirits are restless. They whisper of a coming darkness, a force that seeks to break free. I have failed to contain it, and now I fear it will consume us all. To those who follow, beware the phantom library wing. Its secrets are not meant for the living. Back at the library, Rebecca and Michael pored over Elias's notes, searching for clues. They discovered references to an ancient book, rumored to contain a powerful spell capable of permanently sealing the spirits within the phantom wing. But the book's location was unknown, lost to time. As they worked late into the night, the atmosphere in the library grew heavy with tension. The whispers returned, more insistent and menacing than before. Shadows danced along the walls, and the temperature dropped sharply. "We're not alone," Michael whispered, his eyes darting around the room. Rebecca nodded, her heart pounding. "We need to find that book. It's the only way to end this." Their search led them back into the phantom wing, armed with a newfound determination. The ancient tomes and eerie paintings seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, but they pressed on, driven by the urgency of their mission. In a hidden alcove, behind a row of ancient texts, they found a small, weathered chest. Inside, wrapped in a silk cloth, was the book they had been searching for. Its cover was adorned with intricate runes, and the pages glowed with a faint, ethereal light. "This is it," Rebecca said, her voice trembling. "The key to sealing the spirits." As they prepared to perform the spell, the air grew thick with malevolent energy. The spirits, sensing their intent, surged forth, their whispers rising to a deafening roar. Shadows coalesced into twisted forms, reaching out with grasping hands. Rebecca and Michael stood their ground, reciting the incantation from the book. The runes glowed brighter, and a powerful wind swept through the wing, pulling the spirits back into the cursed tomes. The shadows writhed and screamed, but the spell held firm. With a final thunderous crash, the spirits were sealed, and the phantom library wing fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and stillness. Rebecca and Michael slumped against the wall, exhausted but triumphant. They had uncovered the dark history of Winterstone Library and faced its malevolent spirits head-on. But they knew their work was far from over. The Phantom Wing held many more secrets, and they were determined to uncover them, one by one. Despite the temporary calm, Rebecca and Michael knew they had only scratched the surface of the Phantom Library Wing's mysteries. The following days were a blur of research and preparation. They continued to investigate the dark history of Winterstone Library, trying to piece together any remaining fragments that might help them understand the full extent of the danger they faced. As they delved deeper, strange occurrences began to plague the library. Books flew off shelves, lights flickered, and cold spots appeared throughout the building. The whispers, though quieter, never truly ceased. Each night, Rebecca found herself waking up in a cold sweat, haunted by nightmares of shadowy figures and ghostly voices. One evening, as Rebecca and Michael were going through a stack of old letters in the main reading room, a chilling wind swept through the library, extinguishing the lights. The temperature plummeted, and the oppressive sense of dread returned with a vengeance. "We need to finish this," Michael said, his voice trembling. "The spirits are growing more aggressive. They know we're close to uncovering their secrets." Rebecca nodded, her eyes scanning the darkened room. "We have to find a way to stop them for good." The research had pointed to one final ritual, a powerful spell that could permanently banish the spirits from the Phantom Wing, but it required a combination of rare ingredients and precise timing. They gathered the necessary items: a vial of holy water, a piece of iron from a graveyard gate, and a consecrated candle, and prepared for the ritual. As midnight approached, the library seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Shadows moved of their own accord, and the whispers grew louder, filling the air with an eerie chant. Rebecca and Michael set up the ritual in the main reading room, placing the items in a precise arrangement around an ancient book of spells they had found in the Phantom Wing. The moment they began the incantation, the room erupted in chaos. Books flew off shelves and the air crackled with electricity. The spirits, sensing the threat, manifested in full force. Ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with hatred. Rebecca's voice shook as she recited the spell, her eyes never leaving the flickering candle flame. "Spirits of darkness, we command you to return to the void from whence you came. By the power of this sacred rite, we banish you!" The spirits screamed in fury, their forms twisting and writhing. One of them, a tall, gaunt figure with hollow eyes, lunged at Rebecca. She stumbled back, but Michael stepped forward, holding up the iron gate piece. The spirit recoiled, its form flickering before dissipating into smoke. "Keep going!" Michael shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "We're almost there!" Rebecca continued the incantation, her voice growing stronger with each word. The spirit's screams grew more desperate, and the room shook as if an earthquake had struck. The candle flame burned brighter, its light pushing back the shadows. With a final thunderous crash, the spirits were pulled back into the Phantom Wing. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The library fell silent, the air clear and still. Rebecca and Michael collapsed to the floor, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. "Did we do it?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely a whisper. Michael nodded, his eyes filled with relief. "I think so. The spirits are gone." But as they gathered their strength and began to clean up the remnants of the ritual, a chilling realization dawned on them. The Phantom Wing, though now devoid of its malevolent inhabitants, still held many secrets. And there were likely other spirits bound within its cursed books, waiting for the chance to be released. "We can't let our guard down," Rebecca said, her voice firm. "The library may be safe for now, but we need to ensure it stays that way." Over the next few weeks, Rebecca and Michael worked tirelessly to fortify the Phantom Wing. They sealed the hidden door and placed protective wards around the library. They also continued their research, hoping to find any remaining dangers lurking within the wing's ancient tomes. One evening, as they were finishing up their work, Rebecca felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the room, its eyes glowing with a familiar, malevolent light. "You cannot banish us," the figure hissed, its voice a chilling echo. "We will always return." Rebecca's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "We will be ready for you," she said, her voice steady. "And we will stop you." The figure faded into the darkness, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. Rebecca and Michael knew their battle was far from over, but they were determined to protect the library and uncover the full extent of its secrets. As they left the library that night, the whispers of the Phantom Wing echoed in their minds, a reminder of the dark forces they had faced and the challenges still to come. But together, they felt stronger, ready to confront whatever horrors awaited them in the shadows of Winterstone Library. Rebecca and Michael knew they had no choice but to press on. Despite their exhaustion, they began preparations for the final ritual, the ritual of binding, that would permanently seal the Phantom Library wing and prevent any further malevolent spirits from escaping. The task was daunting, and they were acutely aware of the risks involved. Rebecca meticulously gathered the required items for the ritual: a silver mirror, the beeswax candle, the bundle of her hair from their earlier attempts, and a ceremonial dagger they found hidden among Cromwell's belongings. Each item was crucial, and the ritual had to be performed with precise timing during the next full moon, only a few nights away. Michael, meanwhile, pored over ancient texts and manuscripts, studying the intricate details of the ritual. He discovered that it was not just a matter of sealing the wing. They had to confront and bind the spirits that remained within it. The process would be dangerous, as the spirits would likely resist, seeking to maintain their tenuous grip on the mortal world. As the night of the full moon approached, the air in Winterstone Library grew thick with tension. Shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, and the whispers returned, more insistent and malicious than ever. Rebecca and Michael could feel the spirits' anger, their presence a dark cloud hanging over the library. On the night of the ritual, they gathered in the main reading room, the moonlight streaming through the windows, casting eerie patterns on the floor. The air was cool and still, the silence broken only by the faint rustle of pages, as if the library itself were alive. Rebecca placed the silver mirror on the floor, positioning it so that it reflected the moonlight. She lit the beeswax candle, its flickering flame casting long shadows on the walls. Michael held the ceremonial dagger, his face set with determination. "Are you ready?" Rebecca asked, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Michael nodded. "We have to do this. For the library, and for ourselves." They began the ritual, their voices joining in a chant that echoed through the empty halls. The air grew colder, and the shadows deepened, coalescing into ghostly forms. The spirits emerged, their eyes glowing with malevolence, their whispers rising to a cacophony of anger and despair. Rebecca held up the bundle of her hair, reciting the ancient incantation. The spirits howled in fury, their forms writhing and twisting as they fought against the binding spell. Michael stepped forward, the dagger in his hand, and sliced his palm, letting his blood drip onto the silver mirror. The mirror glowed with an ethereal light, the moonlight intensifying the reflection. The spirits recoiled, their howls turning to screams of agony. The binding spell took hold, pulling the spirits toward the mirror, their forms distorting as they were drawn into the reflective surface. Rebecca's voice grew louder, her will unwavering. "By this binding, I command you to return to the void. You shall not harm this place again." The spirits' resistance weakened, their forms dissipating into the mirror. The candle's flame burned brighter, its light merging with the glow of the mirror. With a final thunderous roar, the spirits were sucked into the mirror, their presence vanishing from the room. The library fell silent, the air clear and still. Rebecca and Michael collapsed to the floor, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and relief. The ritual of binding had succeeded. "We did it," Michael whispered, his voice hoarse. Rebecca nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "The spirits are gone. The library is safe." They remained on the floor, catching their breath and letting the reality of their victory sink in. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. But as they began to clean up the remnants of the ritual, Rebecca noticed something strange. The silver mirror, now dark and cold, still held a faint, eerie glow. She picked it up, examining the reflective surface. Within the glass, she saw fleeting images of the spirits they had bound, their forms trapped and contained. "This mirror, it's a prison for the spirits," Rebecca said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. Michael joined her, his eyes widening as he looked into the mirror. "We need to keep this safe. If it ever breaks..." Rebecca shuddered at the thought. "We'll lock it away, somewhere it can never be found." They carefully wrapped the mirror in a protective cloth and placed it in a secure box. Together, they carried it to the deepest part of the library's basement, where they found an old, iron-bound chest. They placed the box inside and locked the chest, sealing it with protective wards to ensure it would never be opened. As they ascended from the basement, Rebecca and Michael felt a profound sense of closure. The library was finally free from the malevolent spirits that had haunted it for centuries. The Phantom Library wing, though still filled with ancient tomes and eerie artifacts, was now just a relic of the past, its dark power contained. They stood together in the main reading room, the first light of dawn breaking through the windows. The library, once a place of fear and dread, now felt like a sanctuary of knowledge and history. "We did it," Rebecca said, her voice filled with pride and relief. "We saved the library." Michael smiled, his eyes reflecting the dawn's light. "And ourselves." As they left the library, ready to face the new day, the whispers of the Phantom Wing were nothing more than echoes of the past, a reminder of the darkness they had conquered together. The tranquility at Winterstone Library was short-lived. Despite their efforts to bind the spirits and seal the Phantom Library wing, the library itself seemed to rebel. Books began to fall off shelves, lights flickered erratically, and a sense of unease permeated the air. Rebecca and Michael knew they were not yet done with the darkness that lurked within the library's ancient walls. One evening, as they were reviewing their research in the main reading room, a loud crash echoed through the library. They rushed to the source of the noise and found a heavy tome lying on the floor, its pages open to a passage about exorcisms and spirit bindings. The air around them grew colder, and the oppressive feeling returned with a vengeance. "The spirits are not completely gone," Rebecca said, her voice tense. "They're still here, fighting to break free." Michael nodded, his expression grim. "We must have missed something. There's still a connection to this world that we haven't severed." Determined to uncover the missing link, they returned to the Phantom Library wing. The air was thick with malevolence, the shadows darker and more menacing. They knew they were walking into danger, but they had no choice. They had to confront whatever remained and put an end to it once and for all. As they entered the hidden wing, the temperature dropped sharply. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling their minds with fear and doubt. Rebecca and Michael pressed on, their resolve unshaken. They reached the center of the wing, where the massive stone pedestal stood. The book that had once rested there was now gone, replaced by an empty, echoing silence. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a tall, gaunt figure, the spirit they had encountered before, now more powerful and enraged. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light, and its mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "You thought you could banish us," the spirit hissed, its voice echoing through the chamber. "But we are bound to this place. We will never leave." Rebecca and Michael stood their ground, their hearts pounding with fear. "We're here to end this," Rebecca said, her voice steady. "You have no power over us." The spirit laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down their spines. "You are fools. You cannot destroy what you do not understand." Michael stepped forward, holding up the ceremonial dagger. "We understand enough. You are bound to this place, but we can break that bond." The spirit lunged at them, its form shifting and flickering. Rebecca and Michael moved in unison, their training and preparation guiding their actions. Rebecca recited the incantation they had learned, her voice rising above the spirit's screams. Michael held the dagger steady, ready to strike at the heart of the malevolent force. As the incantation reached its climax, the spirit let out a final, furious scream. The shadows around them writhed and twisted, then began to dissipate. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a clear, cold stillness. The spirit's form flickered one last time before it vanished, leaving behind only an eerie silence. Rebecca and Michael stood in the center of the Phantom Library wing, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. They had done it. They had confronted the darkness and emerged victorious. The library was finally free from the malevolent force that had haunted it for centuries. "We did it," Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's over." Rebecca nodded, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "The library is safe." They left the Phantom Wing, sealing the hidden door behind them. As they returned to the main reading room, the air felt lighter, and the oppressive sense of dread was gone. The library was once again a place of knowledge and refuge, free from the malevolent spirits that had plagued it for so long. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as Rebecca and Michael worked to restore the library to its former glory. They repaired the damage, cleaned the dust and cobwebs, and reorganized the shelves. The whispers and shadows were gone, replaced by a sense of peace and tranquility. One evening, as they sat together in the main reading room, Rebecca looked around at the familiar shelves and smiled. "We did it, Michael. We saved the library." Michael nodded, his eyes reflecting the warm glow of the lamps. "And we uncovered its secrets. The Phantom Library Wing will always be a part of this place, but now we understand its history and its power." Rebecca reached out and took his hand. "Together, we can protect it." As they sat in the quiet library, the first stars of the evening twinkling outside the windows, they knew their journey was far from over. The Phantom Library wing held many more secrets, and there were other mysteries waiting to be uncovered. But for now, they were content, knowing they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The library was once again a sanctuary, a place of knowledge and history, and Rebecca and Michael were its guardians, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. The tranquility that followed their final confrontation with the malevolent spirit was a welcome relief for Rebecca and Michael. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and Winterstone Library now felt like a sanctuary once more. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the experience had left them both changed. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly to ensure the library remained safe. They reinforced the protective wards around the Phantom Library wing and placed new locks on the hidden door. Michael created a detailed record of their experiences, documenting every step they had taken to bind the spirits and seal the wing. Rebecca, meanwhile, continued to explore the library's history, delving into records and journals that had previously been overlooked. She found references to other hidden wings and secret collections in libraries around the world, suggesting that Winterstone was not an isolated case. The thought of other cursed wings and malevolent spirits made her shiver, but it also fueled her determination to protect Winterstone. One sunny afternoon, as Rebecca was cataloging a collection of rare books in the main reading room, she heard a soft knock on the library's front door. She opened it to find Mrs. Abernathy, the curator from the Historical Society, standing on the steps with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, Rebecca," Mrs. Abernathy said. "I heard about your recent activities here. I wanted to see how you're doing and to offer my help if you need it." Rebecca welcomed her inside and led her to a table near the large windows. The library was bathed in the soft glow of afternoon sunlight, a stark contrast to the darkness they had faced not long ago. "Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy," Rebecca said, pouring them both a cup of tea. "We're doing much better now. The library feels different, lighter, more peaceful." Mrs. Abernathy nodded, her eyes filled with curiosity. "I've heard rumors about the Phantom Library wing for years, but I never imagined the truth was so extraordinary." Rebecca smiled. "It certainly was an adventure, but we couldn't have done it without Michael's help." She glanced toward the far end of the reading room, where Michael was engrossed in his research. Mrs. Abernathy followed her gaze. "You two make quite a team. The library is fortunate to have such dedicated guardians." Rebecca's heart swelled with pride. "We're just doing our part to preserve this place. There's still so much to learn, and so many mysteries to uncover." As they chatted, the conversation turned to the future of Winterstone Library. Mrs. Abernathy suggested hosting a series of lectures and exhibitions to share the library's rich history with the community. Rebecca loved the idea and began to envision a new chapter for the library, one that embraced both its past and its potential. Later that evening, after Mrs. Abernathy had left, Rebecca and Michael sat together in the main reading room discussing their plans. They decided to create a special exhibit about the Phantom Library wing, carefully curating items and documents that told the story without revealing too much of its darker secrets. "We need to be careful about what we share," Michael said, his brow furrowed in thought. "We don't want to invite curiosity that could lead to danger." Rebecca agreed. "We'll focus on the historical aspects and the bravery of those who worked here. It's important to honor their legacy." As they finalized their plans, Rebecca couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The library had been through so much, and now it was entering a new era of discovery and preservation. She and Michael had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger, their bond forged in the crucible of their shared experiences. One night, As they were locking up the library, Rebecca paused in front of the hidden door to the Phantom Library wing. She placed her hand on the cool wood, feeling the residual energy of the spirits they had bound. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked quietly, turning to Michael. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "For now, yes, but we'll always need to be vigilant. The library is a living entity, and it will continue to evolve. We just have to be ready for whatever comes next." Rebecca nodded, comforted by his words. They had faced unimaginable horrors and had come out stronger for it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. As they walked out into the cool night air, Rebecca looked up at the stars, twinkling brightly in the clear sky. The library stood as a beacon of knowledge and history, its secrets protected by its dedicated guardians. She and Michael had found their purpose, and they were ready to embrace the future. The whispers of the past had been silenced, but the echoes of their courage and determination would resonate through the halls of Winterstone Library for generations to come.